here in Washington, D.C., Marion Barry is a legendary figure. We are about to have a new tribute expressed to Mayor Barry in the form of a statue, and my two guests are going to be discussing that with us now. Cora Masters Barry is the president of the Marion Barry Legacy Foundation, and Trayon White Sr. is the council member for Ward 8, Mr. Barry's district, while he was active here in Washington, D.C., and they join us now. So first of all, both of you, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having us, RJ. I appreciate you.
It's our honor. And let's start with you, if we would, please. You are head of the Marion Barry Legacy Foundation. Tell us about the statue, if you would.
Well, I'm also his widow.
Yes. Okay.
I was married to him.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into that.
Well,
unless,
I mean, that is part of the deal, right?
Sure, of course. Yeah. I just figure my audience is so sharp that they're going to hear your last name, Barry,
and figure that out.
And make that connection. But all right.
But the statue is a great honor, and it took a courageous mayor, such as Mayor Bowser, to initiate it and fund it and get it through the Barry Commission and through the Arts Commission. And it's going to be unveiled on 3rd of March. It is the most fabulous statue I've ever seen. And I'm not saying that because it's him, but everyone that I know who are very well versed in statues and art are very pleased. So I think the city's going to be pleased. He'll be right there in front of the district building, right there on Pennsylvania Avenue. Every president from this point on to the end of eternity that rides down there for an inauguration has to wave at him. He's right there in front of a place that he gave his life for, that he went in and out of there more times than I think there are sands on the beach. So it's appropriate that it's there, and it's really wonderful that it's getting so much support, especially from the city council, like our council member here, Mr. Trayon White, who was Marion's mentee, and he is carrying on the tradition in a very wonderful fashion. Obviously, the other council members and the mayor, they're all behind it. So we have the city officials behind it, but more importantly, we have the citizens, the people, the residents that are very excited about it, especially here in Ward 8, where they're gathering in numbers of hundreds to meet at the Anacostia Station at 9 o'clock in the morning on March 3rd, get some coffee and donuts, and they're going to come on down there like it's one of those old Barry campaigns. Barry, Barry.
All right. Well, I got to say, I saw the pictures of the statue in the paper, and it's really, to me, looks like him. I think he did a great job there. And now, Councilmember White, you are, Marion Barry was your mentor. You represent Ward 8 that has such a deep connection with Marion Barry. So tell us, what should people, a lot of people who listen to this program are in other cities. We have a lot of listeners in Chicago, New Orleans, other places around the country. What should people who are not from Washington, D.C., because I think most people in Washington, D.C. know a lot about the Marion Barry legacy, what should people from other parts of the country know about the political legacy of Marion Barry here?
So today I was honored to do a ribbon cutting today at the Arc on Mississippi Avenue. And while I'm there doing a ribbon cutting, I have to give tributes to Marion Barry, who had the vision to partner with William C. Smith to build a state-of-the-art theater, a Boys and Girls Club. We just started a new hospital there, 3 schools on the campus, a new playground basketball court. Marion Barry was about big vision and inclusiveness, and he was willing to lay his life down to make sure people that looked like him had an opportunity to participate. He was a champion for people and stood in the gap for most. When people talk about Barry, even to this day, when they walk up to me and talk about him, it's a personal story. Yeah. He was a political genius that used his activism on behalf, not for himself, but on behalf of people who didn't know they had a voice at the time. And so he gave people heart and courage to stand up for themselves, and basically was a pioneer for so many in the District of Columbia.
Leadership is a funny thing. I mean, when I think about leadership, I can talk. I'm a good talker, all right? And I'm a decent writer. But leadership to me is that quality that a person has where they talk and then things happen. They make things happen. They persuade people, they uplift people, they convince people, they bring people together, and they're concrete results. And I don't, I'm in awe of that quality because I don't have it, to be honest. And so I'm curious to know where you think that comes from in Marion Barry's life story, how he got that quality of getting things done.
Well, the thing about Marion that is so different than almost anybody I've ever known, and when I say this, I mean from from his core, Marion really liked people. He did not judge them. He met them where he found them, and he was extremely patient with people, you know? And that is a quality that most people don't possess. They just don't. It's amazing, actually. It's not even human, actually. And I often think of trying to describe it because my words are inadequate. So I thought about it one day, and I came up with, and I felt this. Marion loved people like God, like Jesus loved us. He loves them at their core. He did. And if you know how he was. So that one thing, so when someone's connecting with you that way, you know they care about you. So at that point, there's an unconditional thing that goes on. So you multiply that by thousands and thousands, and there are thousands of people in this city that knew Marion cared about them. They knew it. And one person said to me once he got sick and he couldn't do all the things that he wanted to do, but he always, like Councilmember Trayon says, he always had big vision. One person said, it doesn't matter. We know that if he could, he would. We know that we're in his heart. And that's how you really get people to do what you want to do, because they believe in you and they know that you believe in them. And I mean, throughout his years, he had suffering. He grew up in the South. I always think of the story he used to always tell. He used to always get a knot in my throat that they could only go to the zoo on Thursdays. Marion lived the life of you could only go to the zoo on Thursday. Lived the life of picking cotton. Then lived the life of abuse and discrimination and oppression. So when he broke loose from that, he was determined to make sure that people that he could help would never have to suffer like that. So he was always trying to pull people up.
And again, we're talking with Cora Masters Barry, who is the head of the Marion Barry Legacy Foundation and Mayor Barry's widow. And we are talking to Trayon White Sr., who is council member for Ward 8 here, right here in Washington, D.C. And, you know, when we talk about the political legacy, you mentioned the ARC, which, by the way, is a great institution here in this area. But also, I hear a lot about the jobs programs, the summer jobs, the other things. And I mean, I think our own Kimon Freeman here is product of that program. Talk about jobs a little bit, if you would.
And that's one of the most common things that people remember about Marion Barry, including myself. I got my first summer job through Marion Barry, but it's not just my generation. It's 3, 4, 5, 6 generations of people in D.C. that says the same thing, because you got to remember, he was not only a school board member, not only the mayor for 4 terms, a council member for 4 terms, he was a legend in this city. And people know him from getting employment, you know, and that's big because Ward 8 has had one of the highest unemployment rates per capita in the country. So he's inspiring people all throughout the district to go to work and feel good about themselves and get their self-esteem up and give back to their families and change the trajectory of what they can become. And so he had that type of spirit that was radiant and throughout people he touched.
You know, and I feel like one of the things people don't understand a lot of times about Washington, D.C., particularly people from other parts of the country, is how deep, and it's still a huge problem, how deep and how entrenched the institutional inequality and racism is in this country. When you talk about infant mortality rates, when you talk about states of health, when you talk about the high level of unemployment before the jobs program began, I mean, the obstacles that anyone faces, particularly when Mayor Barry started, but even to this day, in my perception, the obstacles that people face in trying to make life better for Washington, D.C., for a lot of people who don't live in urban areas in general, and for a lot of people who don't live in this urban area in particular, I think people don't really realize, you know, the challenges that a city like Washington faces. Maybe we'll start with you and then get your thoughts on that as well, if we
so
can.
I always think that he had one of the toughest jobs in the country. He became the mayor, was the mayor during a time when D.C. was struggling financially in the city. We were a very young government, and then we had the influx of the crack epidemic that swept through the community, especially black communities, in part with the federal government, you know, and that was a tough time for the community, mass incarceration. And so he had to lead the people during those times where the murder rate was skyrocketing and people was losing their families. It was 3 homicides a day and doing funerals. And for a guy like him with a heart and compassion for his people, that had to be tough enough to get up every day and continue to lead and continue to open up. See, people talk about summer jobs, but Marion Barry was also allowing people to go work in the District of Columbia's government and working in the federal government and give people opportunities that normally didn't get an opportunity. He created not only millionaires, but billionaires in this area. And so people have to talk about that because he opened up the door. Not opened up the door, he kicked open the door. I remember one story, he went to New York. And DC was on the verge of being developed, and he went on Wall Street, and they didn't have any black people at the table. And he went off, he he go off, and he yells at you. He used to yell at me all the time. That was a conflict, but that's another story. And he told me he's not coming back to do any business with Wall Street until they got a black person at that table. And when he came back, they had over 4 to 5 people working there and doing deals on Wall Street because he made them do that in order to do business with the district. That's the type. It wasn't about him.
See, that's the thing too. Some of these breaking of barriers that we're talking about now, which is what you're talking about, forcing barriers down. Maybe not so much. Well, certainly in your day as well. But you and I remember, maybe from different sides of the divide, but we remember a time when some of these changes were unthinkable in a way. And I mean unthinkable in the sense of people couldn't picture it. Do you know what I'm saying? That you had to have a kind of sense of what the world should be that transcended the limitations that people were trying to tell you was, well, that's just the way it is.
Well, at the unveiling on March 3rd, there are going to be 2, perhaps 3 videos that are going to come in from his colleagues from the Civil Rights Movement. One of them was Andy Young, who was older and was with more like King, and then the other one was John Lewis, who was really who succeeded Marion. Marion was the first national president of SNCC, one of the founders. And the other one may be from Jesse. Jesse and Marion were brothers, but Jesse's not feeling too well. Hopefully he'll be able to do it. But one of the videos was Andy Young, who was a mayor of Atlanta and the ambassador and a whole bunch of other great things, and of course was on the front line with Martin Luther King. He said Marion was the first person who took the movement into government. That he never changed. It was just, now I'm president of SNCC, now I'm the mayor, of a city, and that fight for equality and for justice and to break down some of those barriers was translated. So that was the core of his politics. So when he first won, and I had the advantage and the honor of being friends with Marion. See, a lot of people don't know Marion. I met Marion in 1970. So we've been friends through his whole political career. I worked with him on his school board race when he used to say the children. He couldn't pronounce children at that time. And all the way through city council, mayor, and then we got married, and all the rest is history. But the bottom line was that when he first ran for mayor, he was a firebrand, and he was running against 2 established politicians. One was the incumbent mayor, who was sort of a caretaker, and the other one was chairman of the city council, Sterling Tucker. And Marion won, and he won primarily with a lot of the votes from Ward 3, which is a primary, predominantly white, almost all white ward at that time. The black vote was split between all 3 of them. But and they liked him because he wasn't, traditional. However, he lost their support in his first term as mayor because the empowering thing that Trayon was talking about. First of all, he integrated the police force, appointed the first black chief of police, the first black fire chief. He insisted that, as Trayon talked about, that 33% of the contracts to go out had to go out to black or minority businesses. So when he started leveling the playing field, they walked away from him. But by now, the people loved him. So it was okay. But it was that I was there for that first year, that first 4 years, and he changed the whole paradigm in this city in terms of equality. And there were those barriers that he broke down through government. He was kicking in the door. Now he's in the door, and now he's shaking it up on the inside. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And I guess we have a couple minutes left, and there's so much I want to ask both of you. But maybe I'll just say, give you each a minute each, and tell us what we all need to know.
Well, first of all, I am the president of the Marion Barry Legacy Foundation, but I'm also the president and the CEO and founder of the Southeast Tennessee Learning Center, which is right down the street from the ARC that serves so many children. Marion was a partner with me in that dream to get that building built and to serve thousands and thousands of young people who are going to college and doing great things. So I'm internally grateful on a very personal level of the support he gave me so that I could make my contribution to this city and be there, and Trayon's been there with us. So I just want people to know that his legacy, his contribution, it lives. It lives in me, it lives in Trayon, it lives in the young people that we touch because he allowed us to be in this position.
One thing I wanted to say in reference to Marion Barry is he talked about not being afraid. You know, I think that's transcends my age, my race, gender. You know, he gave people courage, and I think that one time I was talking to Marion, and he wasn't doing so well. He was sick, and I was struggling trying to get some things done for a population of young men who just couldn't get through the door. And he was saying, "Trayon, ain't nobody gonna give you nothing." He said, "You gotta go and you gotta take it." And when he said that, I felt it in my spirit. I was like, "Yeah, we gotta take it, man. You know, come on, guys." And I went back with that energy and with that spark,
Courage.
you know. And I translated that into the young men, and we went on to not only get some grant money to do programs, but we expanded to 3 other communities, and we had a program lasted for a few months in those communities during the summer months where the crime was high. But he had so much courage and ambition, it touched people. And people need to realize that about Marion. He was tough, but he was also very forgiving.
Yes.
And that's what I remember about Marion, because people used to say and do stuff to cross him, because they wanted to be him. And then he come back and give him the olive branch and welcome and work him. I'd be like, "MB, what you doing, man?" He said, "I don't want to. You gotta help the people. They don't know no better."
They don't know no better.
Like, whoa! I was like, this people just was talking bad about you, man. And he was very
Isn't that
forgiving.
a Jesus quality?
Oh,
I'm like,
I'll tell you, it's a quality.
I'm feeling bad. I'm like, nah, man, no.
Yeah.
I want to say something. I said, let me go say something to him. Like, you don't do nothing. You don't sit right here. And he was forgiving and welcome back in. And I was like, man, they might cross. And he
Kill him with love.
Yeah. Well, I need more of that myself. I think we all do. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. But Cora Masters Barry, Trayon White, thank you, both of you, for coming in
Thank you, RJ.
and educating us.
Thank you for having us.